Sorry guys, Instagram cut me off. I'm gonna see if you guys join again. Oopsie. We shall see if you guys see if I'm going live again. Hey guys, sorry, Instagram's been really being super spazzy, so I think we're ready for an update. I need to go check the app store to make sure that my Instagram app is updated, but it's been super spazzy with stories and live, so I apologize. But I did get cut off. I'll go live for another hour or so or whatever you guys need. But I did see the next question coming in that said pre-workout alternatives. So I have an unpopular opinion here, but if you need a pre-workout to work out, you shouldn't be working out. So if you need to up your cortisol or your adrenaline, which is what pre-workout does, there's a problem, and you shouldn't be forcing your body to work out when it's crying for rest. So there's the deal, you guys. If you need a pre-workout to work out, you shouldn't be working out. You should be energized enough to go have a workout and then, then come home. This might be a stupid question. How do you know if the body is inflamed? You struggle from digestive issues, rashes, acne, rosacea, keratosis pilaris, joint issues, arthritis, autoimmune diseases, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, bloating. I mean, I can go on, but inflammation is not always clear, but usually inflammation has a lot of symptoms. So a good way to kind of tell is testing your grip strength in the morning. So if you just tighten your hand and you can't really clench your hand very well, or you feel like your grip strength is really weak, that can be a really a good sign that there's actually inflammation occurring. But you could even Google symptoms of chronic inflammation, and there's, a list a mile long. So that is something that you could look into. Will your poop story be going on YouTube? I didn't get to watch it all. I will post it in my highlight stories for sure. So I'll label it poop because, why not? Sorry I asked earlier, but will these Q&A sessions be posted on IG? These Q&A sessions won't be on IG. They'll be on YouTube. Sorry, it keeps going in and out. Like I said, Instagram's freaking out today. But yes, I think that Instagram saved it. But like I said, it gives me an option to save it afterwards, and I'm relying upon if Instagram saves or not. So that's why, you guys, my YouTube channel is in full swing. It's getting there, and I'm sick of really relying on Instagram just because the app starts to get glitchy and it ends up bothering you guys, and I just want you guys to have access to my content. So Instagram for me is not the best way to share my content. It's easy, but I want to make most of my videos and things on YouTube so that you can go watch them and rewatch them and watch them at your own leisure and not have to worry about Instagram. And then Instagram will be kind of more of a place where I just let you guys know hey, this is on YouTube, or this is on my blog, or this, so that we can kind of connect on Instagram quickly, but then the content is on other platforms so you don't rely on Instagram. My dad just got his gallbladder removed 3 days ago. What would your recommendation for people that don't have gallbladder anymore? Yeah, so unfortunately, gallbladders are usually inflamed and irritated because of small intestinal bacteria overgrowth and estrogen dominance. So estrogen can happen in men too, because we have so many estrogens in our environment, and so the gallbladder and bile flow can really wreck the bile, or estrogen can really wreck bile flow. For people that don't have a gallbladder anymore, I think the best option is supplementing ox bile for the rest of their life. Unfortunately, if you're not going to have good bile flow, then you should probably make sure that you're utilizing ox bile. I like a brand called Nutricology on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. You can read, there's 500 reviews, and most of the reviews are written by people who have gotten their gallbladder removed and are dude, this has changed my life. So I would look into that for sure. And that usually is a life changer for people with a gallbladder removal. Honestly, sometimes they're wow, I wish I would have found this when I had my gallbladder still. Hey Jessica, I have extremely painful periods with little bleeding, and I've been noticing clots. So remember, I've always talked about, estrogen dominance is usually the culprit with painful periods and low progesterone. Remember that progesterone should be the dominant hormone in your luteal phase from when you ovulate up until you menstruate. And estrogen dominance should only be temporary, because remember, when you're menstruating and you're on your period, your hormones are at their lowest, and so then 3 to 4 days before you ovulate, you get a huge estrogen spike, and you have a temporary estrogen dominance to tell your brain, hey, it's time to ovulate. But then once you ovulate, estrogen drops and progesterone rises. That is a normal natural cycle. Estrogen dominance should only happen for like sorry, I don't know what's going on with Instagram, but it should happen only 1 or 2 days. You should only be estrogen dominant for 1 or 2 days. And then after that, you should have progesterone running the show. Many women are estrogen dominant from the time that estrogen spikes all the way up until their period. No, that's not good. That is what's happening. That's what's causing PMS, and that's what's causing painful periods. It's causing inflammation, irritation. It's causing the cells to be insulin resistant. It's causing stress, and it's eventually causing cancer and cardiovascular disease and all these things. So we have to really focus on, once we go through ovulation, progesterone is on a rise. It's high, and estrogen is getting out of the body quickly and efficiently, which is not happening when people are not pooping regularly and their liver's not supported and they're drinking too much alcohol and they're not eating enough protein, carb, and fat. They're over-exercising and over-drinking caffeine. Like I said, you're using it like crack cocaine instead of properly. And you're just overall not taking care of your body well and allowing detoxification to occur. And so it's so important when you have PMS issues or period issues or clots that you see it for what it is. It's a luteal phase deficiency of progesterone, and it is also probably a liver issue. And so really focusing from ovulation up until menstruation on liver detoxification, making sure you're getting your raw carrot daily, making sure you have enough nutrients to really support progesterone production can really change your life. It takes about 3 cycles to really start seeing big changes, but each cycle should gradually increase and get better if you're doing the right things. How do you test for SIBO, or how do you treat it? So SIBO is one of those things where it's actually pretty difficult to get your doctor to test for. It's usually a breath test. They're testing for hydrogen and methane, because when you drink a sugar solution or you eat certain things, then that bacteria will create certain noxious gases and it will come out in the breath test. So that's how most doctors will test for it, but it's like one of those things where it's hard to get a doctor to test for it. Usually small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is the biggest thing. Is like you have serious bloating after everything you eat. You have undigested food in your stool. Most people should assume that they have some type of intestinal overgrowth unless their digestive tract is like working really amazing. But SIBO is one of those things where it shouldn't just be focused on. You have to understand that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth happened for a reason. Bacteria got into that small intestine where it's not supposed to be for a reason, probably because you're stressed out, you're not making enough stomach acid to protect your intestine from bacteria, or on the flip side, there's constipation occurring, or the ileocecal valve, which is that valve between the small intestine and the large intestine that's supposed to be a one-way valve, is stuck open, and there's fecal matter kind of shoved up there, and then there's bacteria and fungus can even get in there. So overall, you can test for it, but the test is really like shady. Sometimes it comes back as a false negative or a false positive. It's like one of those things where I really think it's important to kind of go by symptoms more than just a test. But it's a whole body issue. Sodium acetate can be really helpful for SIBO, and you can make your own sodium acetate. It's simply just baking soda and vinegar mixed together. And when they react together, they create something called sodium acetate, which actually makes the bacteria in the small intestine burn themselves alive, really. So you can easily just take like a half a teaspoon of baking soda and a tablespoon or so of either apple cider vinegar or regular vinegar, add a little bit of water, and it will fizz and it will do a volcano thing, and then you just drink it. And it's pretty neutralized. Like, it sounds like it would be gross, but it kind of just tastes like a stale beer or something. So that's pretty much what I think is really helpful for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, as well as making sure your transit time is pretty quick. And then so making sure like things are moving regardless of you making them move or you're eating enough to keep things moving. And then also, like, some people will say like allicin from garlic is really beneficial. Certain herbs are beneficial, but at the end of the day, it's like you gotta like, there's so much information on SIBO right now that's just like ridiculously like stupid. Like, I'm just like, people coming up with these like super complicated protocols, and they're like, okay, like I took this at this time and this at this time, and I didn't eat until like this time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like calm down. Like you have to understand that SIBO happened for a reason. And if you don't treat that reason, then it's just going to keep coming back. You could do the most complicated, expensive protocol in the world, but if you don't understand that the small intestine got bacteria in it for a reason, then and don't fix that reason, then it's going to keep coming back. So I recommend getting the metabolic issues fixed, making sure your thyroid's optimally functioning, making sure you got enough progesterone, things are transit time is going, and if things are moving quickly, things are not going to rot and ferment and sometimes that means like if people have SIBO, low fiber diets can actually be really helpful because you're not actively feeding the bacteria in the small intestine. I heard using aluminum foil in cooking is bad for you. Is that true? Should I stop using foil in the kitchen? Yeah, I mean, I would definitely not cook on any kind of cheap metals, just the same as like a Teflon pan. Something as simple as like if you're trying to, keep your pans clean so you don't have to clean your pan every time, I totally get it. I use parchment paper. So, and then I will occasionally use aluminum if it's going to affect the texture of my food. For example, if I'm making like French fries, I'm not going to cook them on parchment paper because it's going to steam the fries and they're going to be really soggy. So I will use aluminum foil in that instant, like sue me, right? But I try to, like I always say, choose your battles, and it's so important to practice balance. So you try to do the best you can, but like, okay, I'm not gonna eat soggy ass fries. I'm gonna just use some damn aluminum foil, but I'm not gonna use it every single time I cook all the time. And I don't use Teflon pans, and I don't use, like you eliminate chemicals where you can so you can use them when you want to. I don't obsess about things. I try to do the best I can, and I leave a little room for freedom, because this is called life and we're all gonna make it out dead anyways. Can high iodine cause sinus issues? Yeah, for sure. I don't necessarily, I'm trying to like make the correlation as to how, but high iodine, iodine can be really damaging to the thyroid for sure. And so anything that's damaging to the thyroid is totally going to affect your immunity. And if you have, allergies or sinus issues, then that could totally be a sign that your immune system is down, and you always want to look to your thyroid when your immune system is down. Is fat bad for healing the liver? Well, the right kinds of fats can be really potently healing, and the wrong kinds of fats can absolutely be horrible for the liver. So polyunsaturated fats from industrial seed oils and even too many nuts and seeds can be super damaging. So I always say if you have really bad liver issues, you got to really focus on those saturated fats and really focus on giving the liver the nutrients that it needs, specifically amino acids. But carbohydrates and sugars are absolutely essential as well. Remember, the liver has a high need for sugar. It holds about 150 grams of glycogen, and then anything extra it tries to send to the muscles so it can quickly grab it up. But if we're not eating enough carbs or sugar, then our body really has to rely upon breaking itself down for fuel and rely on those stress hormones. So the fat that we consume totally matters, but you got to be eating the right fats, and we know that saturated fats are good for the liver. What could be causing SIBO not to heal? So SIBO in itself is, I don't want you to look at it as like a disease. It's really an imbalance, and the small intestine is supposed to be sterile, like I said, and so usually it's low stomach acid, low digestive enzyme function, which is being caused by high stress. So you are either, not eating enough carbs, you're, in a toxic relationship, you have a horrible work environment, you're in that fight or flight state, whether you're really tense all the time or you have pelvic floor issues and you're constantly clamped down on that pelvic floor, you're just a high stress person, or you don't have enough progesterone, you're anxious. So there's a lot of things that could be causing SIBO not to heal. And then sometimes, guys, like, I'll be honest, like SIBO sometimes needs to be wiped out with some antibiotics. I'll give it to you real. So if you have tried every alternative herbal option and nothing is working, do not underestimate the power of Western medicine to get that small intestine sterile again. And then all the while you're working on getting stomach acid levels up and getting digestive enzyme up and getting bile flow going so that SIBO never returns. Tried antimicrobials, elemental diet, endless protocols. I feel ya. So I would turn your looking away from SIBO and onto thyroid issues and adrenal issues. How's your T3 levels? How's your liver? How's your bile flow? How's your digestive enzyme function? How's your hydrochloric acid? And that is where I would start. Also, you can see an experienced, sorry guys, I'm really tired these days and that's why I'm like stuttering sometimes. An experienced lymphatic drainage massage specialist or an experienced massage therapist in general can feel you for your ileocecal valve. He or she can feel and see if your ileocecal valve is stuck open or actually shut. If it's stuck open, that could be a source of SIBO as well. So remember that one-way valve in between that small intestine and large intestine can sometimes get shoved open. There can actually be fecal matter kind of stuck there, and to massage it out can actually be really, really helpful. I just marked myself with a pencil. So that could be something that you have to look into. Also that migrating motor complex. Remember, every about hour and a half, your body has this electrical current that goes through the small intestine to completely contract the whole small intestine, to kind of like, think of it like a toothpaste. Like you're squeezing the tube and your body's squeezing all junk and all bacteria out. And that's how the body keeps the intestine sterile. Your vagus nerve is needed to make sure that electrical current is happening, as well as enough energy. If you have low T3 and every cell in your body is functioning slowly and inefficiently, of course that is going to struggle as well. And so, you guys have to see it from an energy perspective. If your cells don't have enough energy to function, why the heck would your digestive system heal? It makes no sense, right? Because your intestinal cells and your this cell and that cell, every single cell needs adequate levels of T3 to function. And keep in mind that T4 gets converted to T3 in the liver. And so it's very important to make sure you're getting enough food, you're getting the right types of food, you are eating frequently enough, you're getting enough minerals, which is huge, potassium in particular, and then you're really focusing on lowering stress, deep breathing, meditation, journaling, getting your environment really, really right. And then you can see, oh, my SIBO is gone, right? Because it's one of those things where it has a root cause. Your body doesn't just let bacteria into the small intestine just because it like broke down one day, like, oops, there's a reason. Is juicing carrots the same benefit as eating them raw? Not necessarily, because the fibers in the carrot actually bind to estrogen, but carrot juice can be really, really helpful. The one thing you guys have to be careful about these bright orange foods is too much beta carotene can be a problem. If your calluses are turning bright orange, you're storing beta carotene and you're not converting it to vitamin A, because remember, T3 is needed to convert beta carotene to vitamin A. So there's people, and there's like a very popular doctor right now that gives her prenatal has vitamin A in the form of beta carotene, and I'm just like, why? So that doesn't mean like be afraid of orange foods, but you can do too much for sure. And carrot juice is something that you're drinking a lot of beta carotene, which can end up kind of being a little bit stressful. Do you believe in medical mediums theory of streptococcus being an underlying cause for symptoms like acne, SIBO, and candida? I don't necessarily not believe him. I think he's a quackaroni, but I think that there are things that are unexplained in our body that maybe science can't explain. But at the same time, I do think it's more of an issue. I do think that you have to look at like things like viruses and streptococcus and things like this. If the body is working optimally and immunity is working optimally, meaning your immune system is one of the most badass things on this planet. Your immune system can take care of anything. It can kill cancer if it's working properly. But the minute that your immune system starts breaking down because energy is breaking down, right? Your metabolic function is slow, cells are functioning slowly. The body has now focused on surviving over taking care of the things it needs to take care of, cleaning house, making sure it's fighting viruses, making sure it's keeping Candida under control and SIBO under control and this and that. Now the body has shifted gears from restoration and repair over to just plain survival. Of course, viruses are going to be a problem. Of course. Lyme's, Streptococcus, EBV, of course. But the minute that we optimize our bodies and optimize our cellular function, which is the building block to our whole body, is the minute we start to see a shift. And oops, we no longer have viruses causing an issue because your immune system is working properly. And so again, I see viruses like that as another thing, like, what is the root cause of your body being susceptible to these viruses? And I also see these psychopaths telling people to start detoxifying heavy metals and working on viruses when their livers and their bodies are so suboptimally functioning that their body cannot handle the toxic load. And so here you are chelating or bringing out viruses and heavy metals and things that your body is so weak it cannot even handle. And so it's causing almost more problems. And it's kind of one of those things where there might be a reason why they're hidden in the tissues. So, you know, I don't know everything, and I don't ever claim to. I'm not really sure if it's the underlying cause or if there's an underlying cause to that cause. And I see it more from an energy perspective that I really, really acknowledge and honor the wisdom of the body and understand that the body is quite powerful when it has the right tools and environment to do its thing. But when it doesn't, there can be definite susceptibility to viruses. Can you get hair loss and acne from doing a Candida cleanse? Yeah, of course, especially if the liver is not working really well. And it can absolutely cause hair loss because remember, the liver's burdened, T4 is not being converted to T3, and then estrogen's also maybe not getting out of the body quick enough, or the toxic bacteria, noxious gases and toxins that these bacteria and fungus are letting off are burdening the liver. So important when you do any kind of gut cleanse to also be really supporting the liver. In my practice personally, I really encourage that nobody takes any type of herbs or anything like that unless they're doing regular coffee enemas, because the body really needs to get those toxins out as quickly as possible, really. Reasons for spotting in follicular phase, usually that is low thyroid function or low T3, but it can also be it can be estrogen, it can be, I'm trying to think of what else. It can be stress for sure. Cortisol can absolutely play a role. So kind of gauge your moods while you're in your follicular phase and while that spotting is happening. Pay attention to if you're irritable or I would have to see though, but it's hard to know without knowing details. For me, I have to really see the whole picture of hormones before I can really start to connect the dots. It's hard for me to know, there's a million things that could cause spotting in the follicular phase. So I kind of really focus on, okay, is it testosterone? Is it prolactin? Is it estrogen? Is it progesterone that's low in that luteal phase? Because that can absolutely carry over into follicular phase. But a lot of times mid-cycle spotting is due to either estrogen or thyroid issues. That's very regularly. But again, it's hard to know, and I'm not saying for sure. I'd really have to look at all hormones. My naturopath gave me the whole approach food list for Candida, but I noticed there are a lot of starchy vegetables like carrots, spaghetti, squash, rutabaga, unlimited. Are these safe or will they feed Candida? That to me is definitely safe for Candida. I don't think that if you Google Candida diets or whatever, I'm whatever that means. There's a lot of people that say you gotta eliminate all sugar, all starch, all this. And I'm well, you're going to really slow down your metabolism, which is going to slow your digestion and make it worse. You also, when you starve Candida gets really pissed. Candida's not okay, I'm going to lay down and die now. Candida's a very opportunistic fungus, and it will actually, it can grow these long finger-like, really slimy projections and actually start pulling the cell walls apart and grow into out of the cell walls and into the bloodstream. And it can actually become systemic. That's how, yeast infections occur. That's how sinus infections can get really bad. Like, people actually have blockages in their sinuses and they think it's like, oh, I just can't breathe. And I'm like, you have biofilms in your sinuses, because candida and yeast love warm, wet places. So you don't want to make your candida opportunistic, and you want to keep it fed in the gut for sure. And you want to keep it localized in the gut, because you don't want that becoming systemic. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people go on very, very low sugar diets, and they're still eating lots of fiber though, and fiber's feeding bacteria. And then their fungus is actually getting worse because their fungus is now hungry. And so it's really important to keep it localized while you're trying to kill it. Can you repeat what to take when you don't have a gallbladder? The video cut in that part. Yeah, absolutely. It's ox bile. So Amazon, you can type in Nutricology ox bile, and the Amazon reviews on that, there's just hundreds of people who are taking that with no gallbladder, and they just are like, where did I find that? So yeah, ox bile by Nutricology. And there's a lower dose one. I think it's 125 milligrams if I'm correct, and then a 500 milligram one. And it's kind of like, one of those things where you can kind of experiment with yourself. Some people like to really buy that lower dose and first try to find their titration. Some people just need that higher dose. So it's kind of like, I would do your research, read the reviews, kind of, Amazon reviews are actually a great place to learn about certain supplements, just, personal experience, not like, like science, but it, a lot of people you'll come across a lot of things that people have used, or tips and tricks that people have learned, and it can be really helpful to look there. Celery juice for SIBO, is low FODMAP really necessary to heal? Celery juice for SIBO, I'm like super neutral on celery juice. I don't really think it's that helpful. I mean, it's really high in minerals, which again, you need for stomach acid, but you can get minerals from coconut water, sea salt, bone broth. So it's not just celery juice. And low FODMAP really necessary to heal. I don't think low FODMAP is necessary, but if you have serious gut issues, you definitely need to avoid grains and legumes for a while, unless they're really, really well cooked. For example, like really slow cooked oats, cooked in things that are going to make them easier to digest, like milk. So like in a slow cooker, you would make them, or a pressure cooker. And then, but I don't really, like, if you have really severe gut issues, it is like so many people, you guys, like I am included in this. When I stopped eating a bunch of above ground vegetables and almost completely avoided them, I felt so incredible with my gut issues for the first time ever. Before that, I was so bloated all the time and constantly felt like things were like eating things in my gut. And the minute that I stopped just obsessing about getting fiber, and stopped obsessing about getting green vegetables and cruciferous vegetables, and only ate them when I craved them, and got most of my carbs from starchy vegetables that are cooked with fats, so saturated fat, grass-fed butter, ghee, coconut oil, and fruits, I immediately saw huge changes in my gut health. Huge, because not only was I supporting my metabolism with actually energy stimulating foods, which allowed my body to make digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid and move things through my gut quicker, but on the flip side, I was also not eating tons of fiber to feed all this bacteria that was in my gut. So low FODMAP, I think, works in part because it's so low fiber, and fiber is really what feeds that bacteria. I don't think it's necessary to heal necessarily. I think you should just eat what you crave, but I don't think we should obsessively be consuming fiber either. How about that seminar for Only for Fully Nourished? I'm never going to stop bugging you about a seminar. Oh, yeah. So I really do want to get like a retreat going, something like maybe a weekend trip for a select few ladies, not like a select few, but like an intimate group of us, so we can actually just hang out. I was thinking of maybe doing like an Airbnb, something we can like rent a big house and we can kind of all, just sleep together, like almost like a sleepover. I would really like to meet with you guys and like hang out with you, and I would design some things, like maybe make some workshops and teach you about health, and maybe we could do some cooking classes, and I could just kind of like, but we could also hang out, and we could go to dinner together, and we can hang out. So that's something that definitely is it's on my mind. It's going to take a lot more planning than just like, snappity snap. I would never try to make money off you guys. I think there's people that are like, I'm going to charge you $2,000 to be in my presence. It would just cost you what it costs to fly to where we figure out where we're going to go. And then we'll maybe split the cost of the Airbnb, and then all expenses are on ourselves. So I'll make it something that's very fair. But yeah, that's something that's in the work. I was thinking maybe like late September or October, something like that. I don't know if you guys would want to fly out to California. I was thinking maybe doing something by the beach. But yeah, my assistant is really great at planning things. And so that's going to be her job, and we're going to kind of figure that out. But yeah, that's something that I really want to do. I think it would be fun. I just think it's going to take a lot of planning to get it all worked out and finalized. I was curious which days of your cycle you take progesterone. I take it from when I ovulate up until I menstruate. So usually I ovulate around day 17, and so I'll take it then. If I'm feeling pretty shitty, I'll be honest. If I'm feeling pretty bad, like leading up to ovulation, I have been really busy these days, and you guys, sometimes I don't take my own advice, and I'm not eating as well, or I'm not getting enough sleep, or for whatever reason I didn't eat enough that day, or I'm not focusing on detoxification when I should, and so I'm really feeling those effects of estrogen. And so I will start taking progesterone a little earlier in my cycle to kind of offset those effects of progesterone. So I take it as needed. I'll take it for symptoms. If I'm feeling anxious, or I feel like I need more, like the days leading up to my cycle, I'll double up. Like I use it as a tool. I think that it's very potently like youth promoting. So it's like one of those things where it can really be used as a tool, and you can kind of titrate it up or down depending on what your needs are. But like, for example, if I'm getting really bad breakouts, 4 days before my period, or I'm feeling really irritable, I will absolutely take more progesterone. So it just kind of depends, but I try to kind of mimic my body's cycle. You really don't want to take it all cycle long unless it's really necessary, like unless you have really horrible symptoms. But you're going to miss a period if you do that. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you're going to kind of mess up your cycle for a while. You are so funny. Love your perspective. Oh, thanks, guys. My mom always calls me like, she's like, you're dry as the Sahara Desert, Jessica. And I'm like, I know. I have such dry humor. I'm kind of a cynical person. Can you talk about cold sores, please? Yeah, so cold sores are caused by the herpes virus. A lot of times people get them when their immunity is low. I personally struggled with them for a while, and I would find that I would get one like almost cyclically, and I started to notice, maybe my estrogen dominance times are the times when I also get herpes virus or get my cold sores back. And so maybe pay attention to if there's any pattern. That's why it's so important to keep a health journal, especially when you're trying to heal. I don't think you want to like obsessively track your health, but I think it's important to keep the track of like days of your cycle, do a quick jot down of symptoms, keep track of your temperatures, your metabolic rates, so you can look back in your history and see how things have improved. And to also start to track patterns. A lot of times when you take a log, you really start to see huge patterns. You're like, oh, duh. But if you don't write it down, you sometimes miss them. So when it comes to cold sores, I really recommend tracking the patterns to see if they're cyclical. L-lysine can be really, really helpful. Tea tree oil applied topically can be helpful. Oregano oil taken internally can be helpful. But one of the big kahunas is monolaurin, or monolaurin pellets. Monolaurin is super antiviral, and you can get those online. I really like Inspired Nutrition brand. They're just a little cheaper than lauricidin. You can get them on Amazon, and they come in little scoopers, and you just throw them back and then toss them, take some water and just swallow them down. And it's the antiviral component of coconut oil, so it's really concentrated, but they are very powerful. People use them for Lyme's disease and use them for all types of viruses like Epstein-Barr, but it also helps with herpes virus for sure. How to support the immune system. The best way to support the immune system is to get your gut under control and get your liver functioning optimally, get bile flow going. You really want your gut working optimally, and partially that's just by eating enough nutrients, but on the flip side, you also want your metabolism functioning properly. So you want your thyroid health good, you want your body temperatures warm, you want your pulses optimal between like 75 and 90. You really want your body functioning optimally and your cells functioning optimally. That's how you get your immune system up. Obviously, there are immune boosters like elderberry and mushrooms and things like that. But at the end of the day, your cells really determine how well your immune system works, and focusing on full body function and gut health and liver health and bioflow is going to be the best thing for getting your immune system functioning and really getting irritating foods out of your diet, specifically wheat. I think that wheat is just the devil. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to eliminate gluten. I don't think that gluten is the culprit. I think that it's our hybridized wheat that has too many chromosomes that's the issue. And not all gluten-containing grains are necessarily bad. So if they're, more ancient, like kamut flour or einkorn, those are a lot less inflammatory than our normal whole wheat bread. What are your thoughts on biologics? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do you mind telling me? How much sugar per body pound should be consumed daily? I guess it's I don't want to say it's a weird question, but I don't think that you should go by body pound. It's not like protein where you're okay, one gram of sugar for every body pound. It's more of how much sugar you can tolerate. A lot of people are on chronically low carb diets, or their cells aren't optimally functioning. And, just because sugar is a preferred form of fuel does not necessarily mean your body's burning it optimally. And so sometimes you do have to slowly shift your body back to a glucose burning state, and you got to get your cells functioning optimally by taking the right nutrients or eating the right nutrients. Remember that macronutrients are what's needed to actually run things. However, micronutrients are what determine how you burn your macronutrients. And this is what we forget. When I say sugar, I don't mean go pound the chocolate cake. I mean sugar, fruit and starches and healthy things that are going to provide you, I would say, sugar with nutrients, sugar that comes with nutrients. So that is really important, that you're getting all these micronutrients. You're also getting enough amino acids. But I usually say you don't ever want to be on less than 100 grams per day of carbohydrate. And it's best to be 100 to 150, and then even above that. So usually the more active you are, or the more metabolically stable you are, you want to get more and more. Some people are getting up to 200, 250, and they're fine. But you have to sometimes slowly get yourself up to that. You're not just saying okay, 250, and you're going from 50 to 250. That's a bad idea, because that's adding fuel to a tank to a car that's not really burning it. And so you want to actually slowly work your metabolism up. And if you're on a high fat diet, or you kind of need to slowly lower fats and slowly raise sugars. That's kind of how it goes. So that's kind of one of those things where you have to determine what works well for you by measuring both your temperatures and your pulses, and also measuring your symptoms. A lot more women see that as they eat more carbs, they feel a lot more metabolically stable, but they also feel more grounded, less anxiety. They feel happier, more confident. Their libido's a lot better. They just feel more chill and relaxed, and they just feel like themselves. They feel like they could go out into the world and own it. And so that's something where you kind of have to experiment and find what's best for you. Can clean keto, high healthy fat diet cause liver damage? Yes, so a study just came out last week that said that keto actually causes hepatic insulin resistance, meaning it causes the liver cells to stop utilizing sugar properly and causes them to become inflamed and dysfunctional. And this, is applying to all high fat diets. So, remember that when you're on a keto diet, you're forcing your body into a hypoglycemic state, meaning that you're forcing blood sugar low. Like I always say, when your blood sugar is low, what has to happen? If it's not coming in the trap, it's being made. And it's being made because the liver is telling adrenaline and cortisol to raise, to break down your tissues, will send those amino acids or free fatty acids, it will do both, and turn them into glucose to raise blood sugar. So this idea that when you're on keto, you're burning fat, I'm you're not burning fat, you're still burning sugar. It's just sugar that your body had to make going through the process of gluconeogenesis. And remember that once the liver is empty of sugar, stress hormones are at play almost all the time. This is why when women go on keto, at first they feel really great, right? They feel really energized, and they're go get her, and they're they lose that first 5 to 10 pounds, but they also experience something called apparently the keto flu. Well, the keto flu is your body going into hypoglycemia. that is just as stressful as having high blood glucose. Low blood glucose is even more stressful on the body. And to act like the lower your blood sugar, the better is bizarre to me. They must not understand biology at all. So, even high healthy fats, it really depends on what you're considering healthy, because if you're doing lots of nuts and seeds and lots of canola oil and soybean and those kinds of things, no. If you're doing lots of saturated fats, I mean, at the end of the day, a high quality keto diet or clean keto diet is better than a standard American diet. We can both agree on that. However, the idea that because the body's not burning sugar properly, we should just take away sugar altogether, even though that's its preferred source of fuel, is just bizarre to me. That's not asking the right question, which is why the body isn't burning sugar properly in the first place. So it can cause liver damage. That's like the first study that's come out that's shown it can actually directly affect, it can make people insulin resistant. So going on keto can actually cause insulin resistance, and damage specifically happens to the liver cells. Bleeding every ovulation, is that normal? No, that's not normal. It's probably an estrogen issue, I would say, but it can be like an inflammation issue as well. Can you explain why supplementing with iodine for thyroid isn't advised? So many professionals say to take iodine because Americans do not get iodine. Thanks. So again, saying that Americans don't get iodine is not applying to people that are getting iodine-rich foods. And supplementing with iodine can be really harmful to the thyroid, just like supplementing too much of any mineral can be harmful to any part of your body. You have to understand that minerals are it's like baking a cake, right? You do 2 cups of flour, you do 1 cup of sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking soda. And if I added 5 tablespoons of baking soda to that cake and I didn't raise the amount of flour, or I didn't raise the amount of sugar, the cake wouldn't come out, right? It's the same with the body. We need minerals, but they almost always come in a package in nature. For example, if you're eating iodine-rich foods, like let's say scallops, they have iodine and selenium in them. You never find iodine, I shouldn't say you never, but you rarely find iodine without selenium in nature. Why? Because they work synergistically. But when we start to supplement iodine, then we say, okay, now I need to supplement selenium. And then if you supplement selenium, it's like, okay, now I need to supplement zinc. And then, we got to supplement copper because that can really mess up copper balance. And I'm like, why don't you actually shift your focus to getting your nutrients from food? Eat white shellfish a couple times a week if you really need iodine. And that also will provide you with some zinc, some copper, and some selenium so that you don't imbalance your minerals. It's just important to acknowledge that when we start to over-supplement one thing, we usually cause a chain reaction that's not always a good thing. And unless you know for sure your iodine is low, it's very dangerous to start supplementing minerals. I think some of us underestimate the power of specific minerals or vitamins. We act like, they're doing nothing in the body. And sometimes 1 dose of something, 1 dose can get your levels back up to normal. That is actually true with zinc. I see people taking zinc constantly all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you usually can take a week of zinc and your zinc levels are back up to normal. Now, if your body's moving through those minerals quickly, you'll become deficient again. But the best way to get nutrients, you guys, is just to get it from your food. So you do need iodine for proper thyroid function, just like you need lots of minerals for proper thyroid function, but that doesn't mean more is better. Sorry, so many questions. I have normal TSH and T3, but high T4. Why? My antibodies are significantly improving though. Your thyroid could be just producing more T4. Also, do you get a full thyroid panel? Do you get reverse T3 checked? That's important because if you have low thyroid symptoms, but you have normal T3, what's happening with that T3? Is cortisol turning it into reverse T3? Because if that's the case, then that could absolutely be causing a problem. So the thyroid can also be a little overactive when it's exposed to too many pesticides or heavy metals or polyunsaturated fats. Those are all pretty damaging to the thyroid tissue. So overall, it's really important to get a full thyroid panel so you get a full picture. It's hard to know why T4 is high without seeing the full thyroid panel. How many times would you say it's good to use infrared sauna? I think it's really good to listen to your body. I think some people are they'll sit in the infrared sauna for an hour and they're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna faint, but it's just detox, and I'm like, Probably not. Like, probably not a great idea. So it's kind of like what you tolerate. I wouldn't like obsessively go in the infrared sauna, but I also think it's a great therapy. I think that it's really what you tolerate. So sometimes some shorter sessions a couple times a week can be helpful. Some people don't have time. Like if you have an infrared sauna, that's going to look a lot different than someone that has to go to a place. Like I have to go to there's a wellness spa near me that I have a membership to that has an infrared sauna. And so I don't necessarily make it more than probably once a week or so. And so I will sit in there for an hour once a week. Whereas if I had one in my house, I would probably go in there 3 or 4 times a week for less time, like maybe 10 to 20 minutes. So it's kind of like what you have available to you and what works for your schedule. And you never want to push it too hard either. You should never feel crappy afterwards. Another thing you guys have to understand about infrared light therapy is that infrared light does speed up your metabolism. And so many people make the mistake of they're sweating out all their minerals and then they don't consume sugar afterwards and support their liver in that way. And I'm like, you're literally forcing your body to like eat itself alive after an infrared sauna session if you're not consuming fuel. So I really recommend not bringing or drinking just straight water while you're in their infrared sauna, and instead doing like coconut water, or do like half water, half orange juice, or make sure you put like honey or some kind of coconut sugar, some kind of sugar into your hydration or your water, so that you don't sweat out all your minerals and then cause more stress afterwards, because your cells are speeding up when exposed to that infrared light. How to test vagal nerve function. So some people actually, it's hard to really know. I think it's like one of those things where you don't really know, but you can tell if you have gut issues or you have stress issues, adrenal issues, thyroid issues. You can kind of assume you have vagal nerve issues, like you've lost your vagal tone. But a big sign of losing your vagal tone is actually losing your gag reflex. So if you can handle like anything sticking out the back of your throat without gagging, there could be an issue. A lot of people say like, yeah, I've really lost my gag reflex. And I'm like, So having a good gag reflex can be a sign that you're getting that, because the gag reflex is actually like a reflex. It's an instinct. It's not something that you can control. It's something that gets stimulated via the nervous system. And so if you're not gagging, the reflex is not happening. It's the same thing as when they like tap your knee and it jerks. It's a similar thing. And so you can kind of test that with just testing your gag reflex. Been listening to Dr. Pete and understand so much more about the things you discussed, feeling more empowered about thyroid and adrenal issues. I'm so glad, because for me, I think Mr. Pete or Dr. Pete is way ahead of his time. He is actually the one that brought coconut oil to the forefront of the health and wellness community. And he's been talking about his stuff for a very long time, talking about energy production and cell production, and how so many of the things in the health and wellness community are actually damaging to the thyroid and damaging to the adrenals. And this is why people are really not healing. And for me, he took all my knowledge of hormones and really connected the dots and put the puzzle pieces together. It finally was just like, boom, eye-opening, done. I finally just get it. And he's an incredible resource. And as you dig deeper into his stuff, I mean, obviously there's just so much information. You find just more and more nuggets. But if you're interested in being able to actually use a search function, I really like, there's a website / blog called Functional Performance Systems, and he's kind of taken all of Ray Pete's work and put it into blog posts where you can reference. And it's really a nice place for if you're, trying to search for a specific topic, you can go into his search bar in the blog and search. And he's really compiled the resources, first of all. So he always puts references, and then also has compiled like Dr. Pete's quotes and what he's kind of said about certain specific issues. But I'm so glad that you're understanding, because I really want people to be aware. Like, it's one of those things where I really think he's ahead of his time and things are coming, and it's like it's so important. Like, what he's doing is so important. Can using essential oils in my diffuser cause inflammation on my thyroid? I don't know about diffusing them. I do think that a lot of essential oils are estrogenic and shouldn't be applied to the skin. But I don't necessarily think like diffusing them and breathing them in is going to be a huge issue unless you're like, your diffuser's like right by your nose and you're like, you know, like there's a problem. But if you're just kind of using it for the ambiance of the room, I think an essential oil is a hell of a lot better than using like a fragranced candle. So yeah, it's just kind of like how you're using them. If you're making them really like concentrated, or you're putting them too close to your body, or they're like, you know, falling onto your skin and absorbing, then there might be a problem. But I mean, we got a lot more pollutants in the air to worry about, so it's kind of one of those things where I wouldn't stress about it. I always have low blood pressure. Is this anything to be concerned about? Tips to help it? Yeah, usually it's a potassium issue or a mineral issue, or it can be a stress issue for sure. But yeah, it's something you definitely want to be concerned about, because the slower your blood is pumping through your veins, the less oxygen that is making it to your tissues. Is it safe for women to do hip thrusts? Heard somewhere here on Insta saying it's bad for our reproductive system. Well, I have actually said that because a lot of times we're putting that bar right over our uterus and like reproductive organs. And most, I mean, I guess like most of these bodybuilder chicks are putting super heavy weights. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? That's not good. It can be very damaging. I mean, like, why don't you just take your bicep and put that heavy weight on your bicep and see how that feels to your bicep muscle? It's like, yeah, I mean, your hips and glutes are strong, but I don't think you should be doing them really heavily. I don't think it's necessarily like horrible if you're doing a lighter weight. I would say maybe like 20 to 40 pounds, but the minute it's uncomfortable for your hips or you have to put some kind of padding on it, I would not put, 100 pounds of pressure on my very delicate ovaries and uterus. I don't care if it's underneath my skin at all. So they're awful for pelvic tilts as well. So many people do them wrong. They don't, as a former personal trainer, well, I'm still a personal trainer, but I don't train people anymore. I really people are usually doing exercises that can technically be beneficial, but they're doing them so wrong that it's actually causing more harm than good. And when we start to do like pelvic floor type exercises or exercises that are going to mess with the pelvic floor, we need to make sure, I'll just stand up right now, that our hips are neutral. We're not sticking our butt out and we're not tucking our butt in. We're neutral. And a lot of us are looking at these bodybuilder girls on Instagram and they're, they have like, I always say it's like an inborn anterior pelvic tilt. They're like actually arching their low back to stick their booty out because apparently big booties are in and back issues are in. And, you end up causing more harm than good. You actually can cause your abs to separate and you'll cause incontinence and constipation. And so it's so important to protect that pelvic floor. I'm not going to necessarily say hip thrusts are bad. I think it's like how you're doing them and how heavy you're doing them. But if it's uncomfortable at any point, then it's probably not a good idea. But I wouldn't blankly say they're bad. They can be really good glute builders for sure. And it's nice to have a big booty. We like big booties. How to kill biofilms in the sinuses. Yeah, so you can do a sinus rinse. You can actually suck a sinus rinse up into your nostrils and into your sinuses. You can type it in on Google, Dave Asprey sinus rinse. Me and Mr. Asprey disagree on a lot of things, but his sinus rinse is pretty good. It contains grapefruit seed extract, some iodine, and some xylitol, and I think something else, I can't remember. And all of those things will actually break up biofilms. Now, it doesn't work for everyone, but it's kind of one of those things where it's worth a try, right? Colloidal silver can also help. They have actually a nasal spray, and you can suck it up, and that can help. I use bioidentical progesterone every night. Is that okay, or should it only be in certain parts of your cycle? It's best to mimic your cycle because it can stop ovulation from happening. If your body already has progesterone in the picture, you're not going to ovulate. So it is one of those things where, remember, your body only makes progesterone from when you ovulate up until you menstruate. It's not necessarily bad to use progesterone every night, but you only want to use it when it's necessary. If you get really bad symptoms during the first half of your cycle, it's better to maybe use a lower dose than you do in that last half of the cycle. But overall, it's not not okay, but it can totally mess with your periods or your cycles. But again, some people have really bad symptoms. They have like really bad estrogen dominance or arthritis or autoimmunity or things like that. And then they do, like, progesterone does help with that. So I think it's like, if it's really helping with your symptoms and your health, I wouldn't obsess about if you miss a period or something like that. Always hungry all the time and never full after a meal. Are you eating enough? Are you eating enough fat? Are you eating enough calories? Are you eating enough protein? Are you eating too much protein? There's so many questions. Too much protein can actually, remember, protein causes an insulin secretion more than carbohydrates do. And insulin directly allows glucose into the cell. When we're eating too much protein and not enough carbs and fat in a meal, our blood sugar will drop dramatically low, and then we'll be hungry again very quickly. So high protein can actually make us hungry all the time. And so yes, I do think that you need to eat enough protein, but you also need to eat enough carbs and fat as well. And so that is something to look into. If you're not eating enough, that's something that needs to happen. If you're not eating super balanced, that needs to happen. If you don't eat a bedtime snack, that might be helpful. And then it's kind of one of those things where if that doesn't help at all, there could be something that's actually eating your food in your gut, which I know it's not like a pretty or sexy thing, but it can be happening. Can hormone imbalances cause the feeling of being sick and high pulses and so on? Of course. That's usually adrenaline or cortisol can cause high pulses just because, you're stressed out. And so you can definitely feel like sick and nauseous and not feel your best. Cannot wait to see if Fully Nourished is something that will be for me. I keep hearing about intuitive eating and I'm not sure I even know what that would look like for me. I need guidance big time. Yeah, I think like there's like an intuitive eating kind of like, now it's like intuitive eating is like the new diet, right? And it's like for me, I'm like, okay, it's important to trust your intuition, but then you also need to understand the food atmosphere that is our modern world. There's a lot of foods on the market that humans have never eaten as food unless they were under a severe like famine or survival state, Like you wouldn't eat leafy greens unless you were in a famine or starving. So it's like one of those things where you do need to understand your food. And that's really what Fully Nourished is about. I'm teaching you about your body and I'm teaching you about food. I'm giving you lots of recipes, lots of resources. And then I do want you to take what's in Fully Nourished and apply it to yourself and apply it to your life. I'm not expecting you to follow it word for word, but I am empowering you and equipping you with what you need to really make huge strides with your healing journey. And I'm equipping you with what I wish I would have known when I first started my healing journey, but I had to wade through all the bullshit and actually figure out what was right, which took years. And it would have saved me a lot of pain if I had just like a simple blueprint that was like, do this and look for this and this. So I'm hoping it's for you as well. I tried to make it really inclusive. It's really about just learning about your body and learning how to track metabolic efficiency, getting real with yourself, getting real with your state of nourishment, understanding your hormones, but then not in a wordy way. Like I went over the basics and I really like dove into what you need to know. And then the second module is all about nutrition and how much to eat and when to eat and how often to eat and how to build your plate. And it has a huge recipe book and nutrition guide in it, over 100 recipes. And then that, third module is just about making sure that you're doing all the lifestyle things. So making sure you're sleeping well, getting enough of the proper light. I talk about light therapy in there, proper types of water, stress reduction, supplementation. A lot of the supplements in there are actually DIY. So I'm really having you focus on eating food using food as medicine over relying on a bunch of pills and potions. And then the fourth module is diving a little deeper, cycle syncing or cycle, being a little bit more in sync with your cycle, liver support, getting a morning routine down, really working on your body image and stress reduction. And then that fifth one is kind of the more practical things, like how to stock your kitchen, how to eat out, like, how to pack your food, just kind of like setting yourself up for success. And then the sixth lesson is kind of more troubleshooting. So troubleshooting weight loss, troubleshooting troubleshooting your temps and pulses. And I provide a lot of tutorials. So I give you like a really good tutorial on the menstrual cycle, on how to take your temps and pulses. So I'm really equipping you with everything you need to know, but no more than that. Like, I don't want to overwhelm or get you distracted by a bunch of BS. It's simply what you need to do to really make leaps and strides with your health and your body. Biologics are various medications that people take for colitis, chronic urticaria, etc. I get injections for my chronic hives monthly called Xolair. I'll definitely have to look into it. I'm really not sure how I feel about them. I haven't done a lot of research on them, and I'm not really sure what their mechanism of action is. What do you think of beef liver or organ capsules? Are they good amino acids for liver health? They don't have the nutritional profile of fresh liver. They're not as good, but they're better than nothing. So it's kind of one of those things where if you're trying to get liver in but you can't, then that's a good kind of bridge. So Instagram's about to cut me off. I have like 45 seconds left, so I'll try to get through as much as possible. I like the idea of a healthy IF, 12 hours and eating 3 times a day, but I get full so fast and I'm hungry every 2 to 3 hours. Thoughts? Intermittent fasting can only be done if you have a really, really healthy liver, because if you don't, your liver can't store glucose, and so your body has to make glucose at a certain point in the fast. And then if you get hungry every 2 to 3 hours, why are you not eating every 2 to 3 hours and honoring your body? How to get your body to burn sugar properly. That's what Fully Nourished is actually about. It's about really changing your environment and your lifestyle and getting the right nutrients and supporting your cells so they can burn sugar properly. If you don't eat shellfish for religious reasons, what should I eat instead? Well, if you can do beef liver, that can be a really good kind of alternative. And then you can also put like maybe some seaweed in your broths. Hi, I think my question was cut off. So I have a healthy menstrual cycle. I ovulate, have a 16-day luteal phase. I eat healthy and don't stress a lot, but I do get really irritable and depressed a few days before I get my period. Anything I should look into? Like I always say, if your luteal phase is a little bit irritable and depressed, you really want to focus on detoxification maybe 10 days before you start your menstrual cycle.